A Colder War is the story of a mole hunt. Thomas Kell is a disgraced MI6 officer who's been in and out of the cold, who is called in by the head of SIS, the head of MI6, Amelia Levine, to investigate a series of leaks and problems in Western intelligence broadly in the Middle East. And he, rather in this sort of homage to Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, uncovers a mole in Western intelligence in Turkey. So the story begins in London and moves to Greece and then eventually to Turkey, where he is on the trail of this man or woman who may be or may not be leaking secrets to our enemies. In the purest sense, what is spying? Spying is making relationships or making a relationship with somebody who has something that the spy wants, information. Or somebody who is in a position to be an informant within a terrorist cell, for example. So a good spy must be able to identify who that person is and must be able to cultivate them, to make a relationship with them, to build trust between them. And that there's something kind of cold and manipulative about that, but there's also something human about that, which I suppose is what writers like myself are kind of digging into. But I think a good intelligence officer must also be, sort of grace under pressure, calm in a crisis. I think a very good memory is a useful thing. And it's a certain, what Graham Greene called the sliver of ice in the heart, I think probably is possibly a useful trait for a spy. I think you'd have to be a spy during World War II just because of what was at stake. And I think that black and white ideological clash, us against Nazism, there was no sort of grey area, no doubt, and you were fighting the good fight. There was something heroic. There was something heroic about the men and women who were spies during that period. And I think you can get a sort of rose-tinted thing going. You hear all about the SOE and so forth. And it's very glamorous and very exciting, and perhaps it wasn't like that. But if I could choose and I had a time machine, I'd go back and I'd be a spy then. Well, obviously the primary influence would be Le Carre, purely because he showed how you could, a novel of suspense, the spy novel could also be a sort of social realist, but a psychological novel, a study of the human condition of relationships. But then you go back to Eric Ambler and Graham Greene. Obviously, those writers have had a huge effect on me. Outside of the genre, I was a huge fan at university of American literature, so I read a lot of Hemingway and Scott Fitzgerald and Updike. I did my thesis on Updike. And Richard Ford, latterly, the writer of The Sports Writer and Independence Days, had a big influence on me. The other person, actually, with The Spy by Nature, my first book, I had this idea that I wanted to do a spy novel in the style of a Nick Hornby book, which I don't think I've ever really told anybody, but to sort of merge Le Carre with Nick Hornby in a lab. That was my goal. I had only a very brief experience with MI6. I was at a dinner with my mum and my stepfather in 1995, and an old family friend, a friend of my stepfather's from school days, who he hadn't seen for about 30, 40 years, turned up, and he and I got talking, and he thought that I would be the sort of fit that they were looking for. I initially thought that it was for just far stream diplomatic service, so sort of pure foreign office diplomacy. But when I turned up, it quickly became apparent that I was being interviewed for a job with MI6. But I really didn't go very far. I just had a couple of interviews and some civil service exams and psychological tests and essays, that kind of thing. And I don't think they wanted me. So that was as quick and as vigorous as it was.